It's the end of week 2 here on Springwatch, and there's been so much drama, my nerves are frazzled.
We've had some ruthless predation, some rigorous confrontation, and some expert flagellation.
Flagellation, is that a word, Chris?
It is now.
And guess what? There's much, much more to come tonight.
So get ready to nibble your nails and sit on the edge of your sofa. It's time for Springwatch.
Hello and welcome to Springwatch 2018. It's the final programme in week 2, coming to you from the National Trust Sherborne Park Estate here in Gloucestershire. And we've been here for the last couple of weeks. We've had some fantastic things on the show, all sorts of interesting predation and confrontation. And hold on, just a sec, there's something at the top of that tree.
What are you looking at?
Right at the top of that tree.
What?
Where?
Small and slimy, moving very slowly.
No.
I don't believe it! The tree slug!
Oh, for goodness
yes.
sakes!
Wouldn't it be great, though? Wouldn't it be great? We've got a top show tonight. We've got a special guest with us, one of the world's most curious creatures, none other than Lucy Cook. Lucy, what are you going to be up to?
Well, I've been delving into Sherborne's ponds on an amphibian adventure.
But first, let's have a look and see what's happened overnight. Let's go to the live cameras. Let's go and have a look at the blue tits. What's going on in there? Oh, they're still in there because we were thinking they might have fledged, but they haven't gone. Still 11 chicks packed in that nest box. They're 18 days old. They are getting a little bit more active there, but let's have a look and see what happened earlier on today. There we are, look, exercising their wings, just getting those flight muscles ready for when they launch, preening the feathers as well, cleaning those quills, making sure they're in prime condition. But look at this, a great spotted woodpecker has been seen looking into the box and hanging around outside. The adults have mobbed it. It didn't stay for long, but it did come back later on, just a couple of hours later. Here it comes now, look. This is this afternoon. Had a look at, watch the chicks. See the way they swat down immediately and go quiet. But a great spotted woodpecker, it knows they're in there. And Chris, woodpeckers, they're notorious, aren't they?
Memory of an elephant.
Yeah.
Once they know where there's an 11-course meal in a little takeaway box, I mean, they're not going to forget that. I think there's every chance that as they start to fledge, you know, they could come back.
Can I just stop you there, actually? Because you two, you think you've got all the answers. You think you're always right. Well, I might just be proving that sometimes you can be wrong, because with our little blackbird chicks that fledged yesterday, and we're still on the barn floor with the little owl watching, you thought they were doomed. In fact, you did. You said they're doomed, they're all going to die. Well, just watch this then, because this is what we saw over the last 24 hours. Yes, the 3 chicks did fledge. If you remember, very sadly, the first chick that fledged was taken by the little owl. That one was being fed up in the rafters, but it was this one we were concerned about, because it's on the floor of the barn. As you can see, it's not moving. And that is the barn where this little owl is, and look at the look in its eyes. Dad comes along. It thinks, shall I feed that chick? Or actually, shall I do something about the little owl? And this has been going on for days, as we know. It's been trying to mob the little owl, trying to get it away from its fledged chicks. And you can hear all the alarm calling going on. It's trying to distract that owl and take its attention away from that little fledgling on the ground. But look at the fledgling, guys. It runs off and it left the barn. And I know you two are going to think that I've just been really over-optimistic and rose-tinted glasses and all that, but they did go, and we've got cameras on the little owls, and the little owls haven't been seen bringing in any other blackbird chicks. So I think we can safely say that they successfully fledged and they lived happily ever after.
That's good news. You know, hats off, because I really did think that was it. It wouldn't last long.
I think he's still being negative.
It has done, fair play.
Well, it's good news. It's good news for the blackbirds. But what about the poor, starving little owls in the nest, deprived of a blackbird burger? Let's go live to them now to see if they've made it. Yes, they have made it. They've actually had a surfeit of food. The parents are bringing in lots of voles, and fortunately at the moment the female is not brooding them. She's outside there, so we can get a great view of those youngsters. Now, when they first hatched, they were white. They had a thin down coat. Then on an evening like this evening, when it's quite cool, she would have necessarily been brooding them. But now you can see they've turned grey. This is their second down coat. And occasionally when they've been turning, we've been able to see their wings, and their flight feathers are already showing. Still encased in those waxy sheaths, but they'll preen those off quite soon, and we'll see them developing quite quickly next week, of course.
Well, you can forget your little owl, you can forget your long-eared owl and goshawk and yellow wagtail. Wait till you see what I've got for you next. You know how everybody remembers where they were when JFK was assassinated in Dallas in 1963, or when man first landed on the moon in '69, or when the Berlin Wall came down in 1989? Everyone will remember exactly where they were when I launch this next nest. Now, I want to build up to it because it's an awful lot to give you all at once. So let's have a look and see where it is. Here we are, look, classic English countryside there, and the nest is in that dense hedgerow. It took an army of nest finders 4 weeks to find this nest with machetes. Eventually they found it. There it is, look at that, a chaffinch's nest.
Defibrillator.
A female chaffinch. Look at that, and it's the female providing food to the chicks. Now, we know that there were 5 eggs in there. There are chicks in there now. We're not quite sure. We can just see the heads. At least 4, possibly 5 chicks. But I give you today a chaffinch's nest.
I feel a touch of sarcasm here. I think we should have a look at the nest live and celebrate
I
them,
like
'cause I think
chaffinches.
Yeah,
I
you're
do.
being a
Look
little
at
bit
that.
sarcastic, though.
Look at that.
Little
I
nest.
tell you what, just keep quiet for 5 seconds and let's just enjoy this. Look at that.
Oh,
And let's
look,
look.
little tufties coming out.
Punky little heads poking up. As I say, the camera is level with that nest. We can't look in, so we believe that there are 4, possibly 5 chicks. And then, of course, following that throughout next week.
You gave it a jolly good build-up. But if the chaffinches don't do it for you, then I'm sure this bird does, because this is a fabulous nest. This is our long-eared owl. And just look at that little chick. That's the smallest chick. And you look at its eyes, they're still dark. Look at the chick behind. Oh, my goodness, it's double the size.
Look at that.
And its eyes have already turned yellow. Obviously, that chick is a lot older than its sibling. There's the egg, as we said yesterday. That's not going to hatch now. But we do know that there are 3 chicks, all different sizes. This is on our nighttime camera, the time that the adult will go out hunting, and that's the mum that's left the nest. Dad comes in. He's got something pretty chunky there, some rodent to feed those chicks with. And I think a lot of dads will know this. It's a bit of a drop and go.
Prepare for the tweets.
And then the female comes back. You can see it's female because it's got the ring. And again, she brings a rodent in. But then look, the biggest one always gets fed first, is what we've noticed. But Mum does try to share it out amongst the other 2 chicks. That large chick is having none of it. I think many of us have got siblings like that just get a nice tasty bit and decide they are not going to share it. No, thank you. I'm a greedy guts. I'm going to gobble it all down myself. It's quite unbelievable how they can actually get one of those down. Fabulous bird, it's a fabulous nest, and I think it's one of my favourites now, actually. I mean, I love the chaffinch, don't get me wrong, but that is a really super nest.
It is, yeah, it's a corker. Now, spring has sprung, finally. It's taken a long time, but it is here. And it's the season of love, not just for the birds and the bees, but for the plants too. And for them, it's an evolutionary arms race, as Gillian found out when she went over to Wales a few weeks ago.
All these beautiful spring flowers. It's easy to think that this is for our viewing pleasure, but of course it's not. There's a hidden, secret world where these flowers have a very special relationship with insects. This story starts with a question. Why does a plant produce a flower in the first place? Well, when you're rooted to the spot or sessile, you need to find a way to reproduce. A flower contains a plant's reproductive organs, and the aim is to get the male pollen to the female part of a flower of the same species. To do that, many plants need help from insects, and so their flowers are essentially insect billboards. To help me delve into this world of flashy colours, lurid perfumes and hidden rewards, I've teamed up with PhD student Abigail Lowe from the National Botanic Gardens of Wales. Hi, Abby.
Hi, Julian.
I love this. We are looking at a dandelion. This is such a familiar plant to almost everybody. Abby, you know what I'd love you to do is talk me through the structure of the flower and what we're actually looking at here.
So you can see we've got loads of petals around the outside, but then the inside is made up of tiny little flowers called florets. Inside there then we've got the anthers which carry the pollen, and then as the pollinators come and they feed off the nectar of the plant, they get dusted with pollen, and then they can go and transport it to another dandelion.
So what sort of insects actually visit dandelion flowers?
So all sorts. We've got bumblebees, solitary bees, hoverflies, butterflies. They all love them.
So they're not very fussy at all about what insects land and pollinate them. Why is that?
I think it's because they come out really early. There's not a lot of plants available, so a lot of insects don't really have a choice. If they were to be really specialised in the relationship with an insect, they're putting a lot of risk into that relationship then. So this way, a lot of things can feed on them, a lot of things can pollinate them. It's kind of a done deal for them, really, that they're going to be able to reproduce.
So they're a really important source of nectar for insects early in the spring. Most people want to get rid of these.
No, don't mow them.
Yeah.
No, they're really important.
Flowering early is one strategy, but some flower traits have evolved to stand out from the crowd, especially when tempting pollinators on a colossal scale. So like the dandelion, this horse chestnut is also not very fussy about who visits, and actually the buzz in this tree is quite amazing. And what's beautiful is when you really look at the individual flowers, you can see the structure there. There's some of them that are yellow and others that are pink. And is that just a natural variation in the flowers?
When the flowers first come out, they've got this kind of yellow base, and then once they're pollinated, they change pink. This tells the insects then not to bother visiting them because they've already been pollinated.
So it's actually signalling to the insects and directing them to the flowers that need pollinating.
Yeah, definitely, they talk to the insect.
I love that. Brilliant. Floral signals are beneficial to both parties, especially when many flowers can all look similar. So it pays for some plants to make their flowers more specialist in order to attract more specific pollinators. So the problem, of course, for the plant is how to make sure that its pollen gets delivered to a flower of the same species. And is this a solution?
Yeah, so as you can see with the bluebells, they've got kind of long tubular-shaped flowers. This stops the shorter-tongued insects from being able to access the nectar and thus pollinating the plant. So only longer-tongued species, like the garden bumblebee, red-tailed bumblebee, they're the only ones that can get into the plant and feed on the nectar.
It's quite interesting. When you look at this, you can see the anthers, the pollen's right there at the kind of entrance to the flower. So there's no way in there other than to brush past that pollen.
The shorter-tongued species have actually found a way around this, and they nibble a little hole right at the base of the flower, and they access the nectar that way. So they don't pollinate the plant, but they get their fix.
They still get the nectar, the crafty little things. But the insects aren't the only ones to bend the rules. In this tit-for-tat signalling game, some plants are fighting back. Oh, Abby, these are some of my favourite flowers, lords and ladies. But I would say most people walk past these and not realise they're flowers at all. Why do they look so different?
Yeah, they look really different, don't they? The male parts of the flowers are right down the bottom here inside, and then underneath there it's the female parts of the flower. This actually attracts pollinators by its scent.
By its scent? Right, so how does that work?
So the inside structure, the spadix, that volatilises odour compounds, so it makes it smell like dung. And then the female images breeds in dung, so it's attracted to this.
So what happens after that?
They go down the sides here, and there's some hairs down there, and they trap the images right at the bottom onto the female part of the flower, and they should have pollen on them from flowers they visited before, and then they'll pollinate the plant. Once it's pollinated, then the hairs wither away, and as they fly out, there's more pollen is released, and then they'll go on to the next plant and pollinate.
So that's incredible. This is what I love about this relationship. It's almost like a cat and mouse evolutionary arms race almost, isn't it? It generates this incredible diversity to the point we have this like really alien looking flower that, to be honest, doesn't look like a flower at all, does it?
No.
I've always loved those cuckoo pines, lords and ladies flowers. You know, that extraordinary story where the insects go down into the base of them. They are quite alien little plants. I loved them when I was a kid. Loved them.
I love them too, but every time I look at a flower like that, it makes me just think, I used to want to be a flower fairy. Do you know those? Didn't you ever want to be a flower fairy? No, maybe it was just me then. Time to introduce you to a brand new nest, and it's a first for Springwatch, and it's right behind us here. And it is a bee box. It's a bee nest, and I'll tell you, this is really cool. And if I take the side of it off, I'll be able to show you the inside. Can you see there's the bee? There's the bee moving, and it's laying eggs in all of these little chambers. Now it's on its own because it's a solitary bee. It's a red mason bee, and all these different chambers will be filled by different bees. And I think when a lot of us think about bees, we think of things like bumblebees that live all together in communities. But of course, out of the 267 species of bees that we have in this country, 90% of them are solitary bees.
Red mason bees are pollen collectors, just like all of the other bees. That's what they're collecting to put in those chambers. They're stingless. There are about 300 species of mason bee in the northern hemisphere, so they're a very successful group of animals. And they go out to the flowers in springtime. They are active from sort of end of March onwards. In fact, these bees are coming to pretty much the end of their term at the moment. But let's take a closer look at what they have been doing inside that nesting box there. So here is one of the cartridges which we've taken out of that nesting box. This is not going to do it any harm. We're not disturbing the bees. You can replace these throughout the course of the season. And each one of these chambers has been filled with pollen and the bees' eggs. Let's take a closer look at what's been going on inside the chamber. So here, the female mason bee has returned. Now, it doesn't have baskets on its legs like honeybees. It actually collects the pollen on a sort of brush-like lower part of its abdomen, and here you can see it rubbing all of that pollen off into the chamber, and then it will lay its egg, a single egg on that, and then fly out, find a puddle, collect a bolus of mud, love the word bolus, and then come back in and mould it into a door which seals that chamber. And then it begins the process again, collecting more pollen, starting work on another chamber. And sometimes they mix the pollen a little bit with nectar. And there you can see there all of those chambers filled with pollen. And in some of them, you can see that the grubs, the eggs have already hatched. They turned into the grub, which then feeds upon the pollen, goes through that process of growth until it pupates. They overwinter in the chambers like this, and then next year they emerge. And the interesting thing is that the bees have the capacity, the female bees, by manipulating the sperm that they've collected from the males when they mate, to make sure that on the interior part here, these will be female bees, and those closest to the entrance here will be male bees, and therefore it's the male bees that emerge first. They prepare themselves for the arrival of the females so they're ready to mate with them. In fact, sometimes they get so impatient that they crawl back into the chamber, gnaw open the cavities and drag out the females before they're actually ready to emerge and mate with them straight away. They're really successful. They're brilliant pollinators. In fact, each one of these mason bees is worth 120 honeybees. They're so much more efficient at spreading the pollen. And you can actually buy mason bees online and keep them in your garden and get your own colony going. Now, we television presenters often have a reputation for being a little insincere. You know, some people say they're going to clean up their act when it comes to plastics, they're going to get themselves an electric car, all that sort of stuff. Well, I'm actually going to genuinely buy some red mason bees. I don't have any at home, and I'm going to introduce them into my garden. Probably.
Oh, come on, no, they're
Depending on how
fabulous.
expensive they are.
Oh, stop it. You can afford it. No, they're absolutely I've been fascinated by this bee box. I
Great,
think
isn't
it's
it?
really cool.
really,
I'm
really
loving
cool.
it. You know, bees are brilliant, but as we know, they're in trouble. Bee numbers have crashed, and that's for numerous reasons: loss of habitat, loss of their flowers, obviously flower meadows, and also because of insecticides, things like neonicotinoids, which have done huge amount of harm to bees. The good news is the European government have just banned quite a few of them, but they still need our help. And the more we know about bees, the more we can protect them. And on that note, Friends of the Earth run the Great British Bee Count, and we told you about it last year. 16,000 of you got involved last year. 10,000 of you have already this month. It runs for the whole month, so plenty of time for lots of other people to get involved. And the way you do it is you download the Great British Bee Count app. And this is a fabulous app because, look at this, it gives you details on all the different bee species that we have in this country. So you can really learn about your bees. And what they want you to do is take photographs and send them in. And the government will use that data and they'll use it for the first comprehensive sort of health study of bees, a proper bee health check. And that's what we need in order to help our bees in Britain. So get bee spotting, and all the details of that are on our website.
Yeah, we often think of bees, we hear about the plight of bees all the time, and normally people are talking about domestic bees, the honey bees. And of course we do need to look after those animals, but we mustn't forget their wild counterparts, which do such an essential job when it comes to pollination out in the UK landscape. From bees to amphibians, and to Yolo and Lucy, who are down by the pond dipping.
Yes, at this point I would like to apologise to every frog, toad and newt out there, because we've been going for 2 weeks now and we have neglected you, but that is all about to change, because Lucy, you are an amphibian fanatic.
That's right. Thank you for that apology, Yolo. Because yes, I love amphibians and they rarely get the attention they deserve, which is a shame because globally they are suffering from catastrophic declines. A few years ago, I spent 6 months travelling around South America investigating the plight of some of the world's most exotic species. But my first love, of course, are British amphibians, and they've had a tough start to 2018.
Yeah, they certainly have, and it's the weather again, I'm afraid. A few days ago I told you how the weather had affected some of our breeding owls, but it's also hit amphibians badly. January was unseasonably mild, and that encouraged a lot of amphibians, particularly the common frog, to come out of hibernation and to work their way to our ponds. And then the beast from the east hit. Thousands of ponds across the country were frozen solid, not for days, but sometimes for a week or more. Now, this is a photograph sent in by John Walters of 30 male frogs that he found dead in his pond. And John says he tried everything he could, breaking the ice constantly, but unfortunately it was so cold for so long, there was nothing he could do. And that was replicated right across the country. Let me show you this graph sent in by Frog Life. And this shows the number of reports of dead frogs, winter kill amphibians, mainly frogs to them. And you'll see that in 2018, it was almost double any other year. The worst year before that was 2015. It's tragic, yes, but it's not quite a disaster, because frogs and toads, considering they're so small, are quite long-lived. A frog, on average, will live for about 80 years, a toad for maybe 12 years. So they can put up with the occasional bad season, but if you have a succession of poor years, then that's when we might see the population badly hit.
Absolutely, and it's been a few months since March's harsh weather, but I wanted to see how Sherborne's amphibians had been affected. So yesterday afternoon, I got to do something I love, tadpole hunting. So I'm heading down to the water meadows, which is a patch of wetlands down by the Windrush River, because I think that that's going to be the best place for me to find my favourite animals, which are toads, frogs and newts. Oh yes, score already. There are thousands of gorgeous fat tadpoles in this stream, and I reckon it probably leads to a bigger pond where there'll be more. Fantastic we've got loads of tadpoles here, quite young, very early stages of development. There's no chance of me finding the adults about, not in the pond, because they will have already left, whether they're toads or frogs. Breeding has taken place, and so they will have left the pond. So they've only got the tadpoles themselves as a clue, but I'm a little bit confused as to what kind of tadpole they are. They look like toad tadpoles, but this pond would seem to me like perfect frog habitat, because frogs, Latin name, the common frog, is Rana temperaria. Temperaria means temporary. Frogs like temporary pools of water that tend to dry up. Whereas toads, they like deeper water, more permanent bodies of water. They have ancestral ponds that they go back to year after year. So I think what is required is to take these guys back to the macro lab for further inspection. And here they are. They were indeed toad tadpoles. They're quite hard to tell apart, but there was a bit of a clue as I left the pond because I spotted some fish in there. Now, of course, fish don't eat tadpoles because they're toad tadpoles because they're toxic. So if you put a fish in here, it would leave them alone. That's why toads can afford to spawn in deep ponds with fish. But it was unusual to find toads so poorly developed at this time of year, which makes me think that Sherborne's amphibians were confused by our weird weather. But Springwatch researchers did find other toad tadpoles in different stages of development, which we've got some amazing macro shots of. Now, metamorphosis is always just such an amazing thing to watch. Look at there, you can see the legs coming through, and obviously the tail, that'll get absorbed into the body. Those are the external changes, but internally, there's like masses and masses of changes going on. The organs are going to be completely changed and realigned. And look, you can see here an arm just trying to make its way out. These animals really are shapeshifters. They change from aquatic swimming vegetarians to air-breathing, land-crawling carnivores, all in just 8 to 12 weeks. And when you have toadlets, they will appear at this time of year. On warm June nights, they'll emerge en masse in their thousands. And of course, there's safety in numbers, but still only 5% of those toadlets that emerge will actually survive to sexual maturity and return to their ancestral pond to breed. Which isn't very many, is it?
No, that is incredible, actually. And of course, what's interesting is that this harsh winter didn't affect toads anywhere near as much as it affected frogs. And two main reasons for that, we believe. First of all, of course, toads emerge much later. And also, they like, as you said, the bigger, deeper ponds. So they don't freeze over quite as often, and there's a lot more oxygen in there. But despite that, in the last 30 years, toads have declined by 68%. So please do what you can to help amphibians. Dig a garden, dig a pond in your garden, let some areas go wild. That really will be a massive help. Now, as if the bad winter wasn't enough, amphibians appear on the menu of a lot of our wildlife, as cameraman Richard Taylor-Jones found out at a very unusual location.
A male kestrel hunts along the verges of our congested road network. And as it departs with its prey, I follow it to Monkton Nature Reserve, an old chalk quarry where it has its nest amongst the ivy. It passes the catch to its mate, a gift which is eagerly devoured. For the kestrels, life seems good here, and this year's young won't be far off. So what is this place that kestrels have made their home? It's an unusual habitat, an industrial space that has now been left for nature, managed by caring human hands. Strikingly, when seen from the bird's eyes, it becomes an oasis, hemmed in by roads and buildings, surrounded by a sea of factory farmland, a story common to so much of Britain's landscape. Yet as small as it is, the reserve has a surprising mix of habitats. It's home to a real diversity of life. And I've heard whispers of one astonishing piece of behaviour that happens here. And it's this that's really drawn me to the place. Grass snakes bask in the sun, getting ready to hunt in the cool water of the ponds. Their tongues taste the air for prey, but they know full well that their best chance of success lies beneath. Great crested newts. They breed here in astonishing numbers, 400 or more. And they're the favourite prey for the snakes. One of them sinks, carefully probing and pushing through the vegetation. With a newt in sight, it strikes. The predator heads straight for the shore. Here it'll have the upper hand. The newt trying everything to cling to the water's edge. In vain. Now the snake must maneuver the newt's head to its mouth without letting go. Not an easy task, and only achieved by utilising its incredibly flexible jaw. The struggle lasts over 15 minutes and takes much of the snake's strength. But finally, after an enormous effort, it swallows the newt whole. It will not need to eat for another week. As the sun, which
A grass snake eating that great crested newt.
It really was, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been under the impression that great crested newts have the capacity to exude a milky fluid from their skin, which is said to be toxic and therefore put off predators. But obviously it's not putting off that grass snake. So I tried to look into this today. I couldn't find anything specific to grass snakes and great crested newts. But what I did find is that there's a group of newts in North America, similar to great crested newts, that produce a toxin called tetrodotoxin, which can be so poisonous that if you agitated one of the newts and then you were to ingest it, i.e. swallow the newt, which you wouldn't do, but it would have enough poison to potentially kill a human. But that a group of North American snakes called garter snakes, which are sort of water snakes, like our grass snakes, have an ability to swallow them. They neutralise the toxin and they can swallow and eat those newts. So I can only imagine it must be the same with the grass snake.
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it?
Amazing.
You have to be in the right place at the right time to get that sort of footage.
Yeah.
As you do this next bit of footage I'm going to show you, which was sent in by one of our wildlife partners, the BTO, the British Trust for Ornithology. And look at this. This is what they sent in from one of their nest cameras. Now, this is a reed warbler's nest, and it's visited by a cuckoo. You can see this cuckoo is a little bit red. It's a rufous colour morph. It's called hepatic cuckoo. And look, it takes an egg out of that nest. That's not unusual. That is what you'd expect a cuckoo to do. Then it sits on the nest and flies off. So it predates the nest, doesn't parasitise it. Now, I nearly got that out, didn't I? Parasitise it. And That's really unusual, isn't it?
Well, normally they take an egg out before they deposit an egg of their own, and the whole process needs to be done as quickly as possible, because if they're caught in the act by the reed warblers in this case, then there's a much higher rejection rate of the cuckoo's egg in the nest. If they don't get seen, the adult reed warblers in this case seem to accept the slightly larger, not quite the same colour egg. So they do it very quickly. Perhaps this female swooped in, grabbed the egg, but wasn't quite ready to lay hers. I mean, timing is absolutely implicit, and she's flown off with it. She will eat it. I mean, it's a valuable little package of calcium and protein, of course, and it does mean that the reed warblers will have to lay another egg, and potentially she or another cuckoo could come back. So it's not a disaster. It's just slightly
wrong timing.
Unusual. But cuckoos really are a species of conservation concern. Over the last 25 years in England and Wales, they've declined by 75%, catastrophic decline. Strangely, in Scotland, they've increased by 29%. So why could this be? What's happening in the UK where you've got an increase and such a significant decrease? Well, one thing's for sure, we have, butterfly conservation at the same time, have measured a significant decline in large moth species, and it's the caterpillars of these species that cuckoos eat when they come to the UK. And what we find is that in more intensively farmed landscapes like those that you find in England as opposed to the moorlands of Scotland, cuckoos aren't doing very well. And it's thought that unless there's substantial change in farming practices, then cuckoos will remain rare or absent over much of the UK, which would be very sad indeed. But of course they're migrants. It's not as simple as that, what's happening to our cuckoos. They are sub-Saharan migrants. They go all the way back to the Congo Basin in the winter. So to find out what's happening over there, the BTO launched a fabulous project in 2011. And if you visit their website, you can get to it through ours, you'll see that today they've put up 10 more cuckoos, each of which is fitted with a satellite tracking device. And these devices last 2 or 3 years. One previously named after myself, I have to say, lasted 5 years. So they're reliable bits of hardware. Recently they caught this one in the New Forest, close to my home, and by zooming in on the map and clicking on the icon like that, you can identify and see exactly where that cuckoo is in pretty much real time. And you'll note that that one was called Bowie, and you can perceive that that's after the pop rock icon, or the Colonel Jim who fell at the Alamo on March the 6th, 1836. So that's one for me and one for my dad.
Brilliant. You're going to like these. We've had some photos of cuckoos sent in, and I think they're really rather good, Chris.
Yeah.
Have a look at these. Now this one is, look at this, mating cuckoos, and that's by Mike Barth. Absolutely fab photo. Isn't that a fab photo?
It's okay. There's a bit, obviously they're out of the frame on the left-hand side, but it's an extraordinary moment. It's a great piece of behaviour that's been caught.
I'd be so chuffed to get
I'd
that.
give that a
and then look at this
3.
beautiful one.
Oh my goodness.
Look at the light coming through there. That's by Steve Ward. Now that is an amazing picture. Come on,
It
Chris.
is an amazing photo. I mean, obviously there's some problems with the lichen on the branch at the bottom and the skewy hill, but no, joking apart, that is, yeah.
You'd be proud of
I'm
that
sick
photo.
with envy. It's an amazing picture.
Keep sending them in. We love hearing from you. Here's how to get in touch.
The easiest way to reach us is to go online and be our friend on social media. You can like us on Facebook, adding your pictures and comments to our page. Follow us on Instagram and tag us into your photographs, or tweet us your questions at BBC Springwatch. And don't forget, you can watch the live cameras day and night at bbc.co.uk/Springwatch.
Now this week we have been looking at plastics and plastic pollution, and I've been meeting inspirational people in Bristol who are doing their bit to tackle the problem. But at the end of my journey I met a truly inspirational woman who's doing everything she can to make a difference.
On my journey through Bristol, I've followed the river as it flows through the city, carrying pollutants and waste with it. I've met the people trying their hardest to clean up the rubbish, from the Froome ferries upstream
That is going to cause a lot of damage to wildlife.
to the teams in the harbour trying to catch it there.
Gosh, what is that?
But as I meet Bristol's western edge and my final location in the Avon Gorge, I wonder, are we still doing enough?
Have having seen all the rubbish upstream, it's quite alarming to think that anything that's not picked up will eventually flow down here and out to sea just a few miles away.
That means 8 million tonnes of plastic are reaching the sea each year. But it was here, whilst clearing plastic litter from the banks of the river, that Bristol resident Natalie Fee had a big eureka moment.
So Natalie, cleaning up this part of the Avon Gorge gave you real inspiration to make positive change. What was it?
Well, I found hundreds of plastic sticks and I went home and did some research and discovered that they were cotton buds.
So how many did you find?
We're finding on average between sort of 400 and 800 buds along a half-a-kilometre stretch of riverbank.
That's absurd. Why are there so many?
Well, unfortunately, people are flushing them down the toilet, which they shouldn't be. Being so small, they pass through the sewage filters and directly out into our rivers and seas.
So finding that many plastic cotton buds led you to start up a campaign, didn't it?
Yeah, well, I just thought it was a no-brainer that they could be made out of cardboard instead of plastic, because plastic doesn't biodegrade, and as we can see, it just hangs around in the environment for years. And I thought, actually, if they were made of paper, then A, they would probably swell up and wouldn't pass through the sewage filters, and if they did escape, then they would quickly biodegrade, but they obviously still shouldn't be flushed.
What was the change that you campaigned for?
I decided to write to the retailers and the supermarkets and get them to try and switch to paper buds. Within a couple of months, they responded, and one by one, the supermarkets came on board.
Inspired by the success of this project, Natalie has gone on to do even more, including campaigning for a bottle refill scheme, leading to a national award for her environmental work.
Well, my whistle-stop tour of Bristol has been really inspirational, meeting people that are really making a difference, both on a local level and on a national level. And although it might seem like lots of individual ripples, all those ripples will eventually come together to make a collective wave of change, and that is empowering. It is empowering, and I just love people like Natalie, so determined to make people change. And it's so important that we do change, especially with those little earbuds. Take a look at this photo. Now, this has become an iconic photo of a seahorse wrapped round a plastic earbud. And it's a shocking photo, but sometimes we need to be shocked to wake up, don't we? Now, that photo was taken in Indonesia, but we do have 2 species of seahorse here in the UK. These are them. Now, that's the spiny seahorse. That has quite a wide distribution. It's found in Wales, in northern Scotland, in the English Channel and the Irish Sea. And this is the other one, which is a short-snouted seahorse, which is only found in the English Channel and the southern Irish Sea. So you might be quite surprised to know that we now have them just outside London. They've been found in the River Thames, and they've been studied by marine biologists at the Zoological Society of London. There they are with one of those little seahorses, and the one that they found is the short-snouted seahorse. That one's quite a small one because they can reach 15 centimetres. And what they found with their studies is they've seen a couple for quite a few years, but just a couple. And then last year, in just 2 months, they found 6 of them. So they now think that they're not visitors, but they are, in fact, residents. And I'm sure there are lots more, because, I mean, you've seen the size of them. Even at 15 centimetres, they're not very big. And if you're diving in the river, they're very difficult to find. But it's really quite amazing that we have wildlife like that in the River Thames, because 1957 it was declared biologically dead, and then there was a huge clean-up mission for the river, and they stopped all the pollutions going in and the industrial waste and all the sewerage as well, and it really cleaned it up, and now parts of the Thames are real wildlife havens. Of course, there's a lot more that we should be doing to clean our rivers up and protecting our marine environments. And Yolo recently went up to a small town on the western coast of Scotland where they're making waves for marine protection.
Lamlash is an idyllic coastal town on the Isle of Arran with pristine views out into the Firth of Clyde. These waters were once one of Europe's most commercially productive fishing areas, and Lamlash held international sea angling festivals, celebrating thriving populations of whitefish, including herring, cod and haddock. But in the 1980s, the tide turned.
I remember fishing in 1986, and we catch so many fish that we wouldn't know what to do with. But the year after that, you went out and caught nothing.
A change in the law allowed bottom dredging close to the UK coast, coinciding with the introduction of a new destructive type of scallop dredger.
There was factory boats coming in and hoovering everything out the seabed. It was horrible.
It was a fishing revolution that eventually saw the Clyde labelled as a marine desert by scientists. Fish stocks fell by a devastating 96%. But the passion of two local divers who couldn't bear to watch an entire ecosystem disappear saw the creation of COAST, the Community of Arran Seabed Trust. Local diver Howard Wood was one of those determined to make a change. When did you first dive these waters, Howard?
1974.
And if I would have come with you on that first dive, what would I have seen?
Dozens of flatfish, plaice, stabs, even big turbot, thornback rays, cuckoo rays, shoals of saithe and pollock. I only really appreciated what I'd seen as a teenager, maybe 10, 15 years later when it was starting to disappear.
But you weren't happy to just sit back and watch all this happen. You actually took action, didn't you?
My friend Don McNeish, I mean, he kept poking me, saying we need to do something. Don had come back from New Zealand with the idea of a no-take zone, which is an area that no marine life or plants can be taken out of. And we tried to do something. As 2 or 3 people, nobody really took much notice. And so we realised that we really needed the community on board.
They say that when you try and establish any kind of marine protection area, the people to persuade are the local fishermen. How did they react?
And we knew them, and we knew them very well, and some of them were our friends. So it wasn't that difficult to actually convince the local fishermen.
But even with the local fishermen on board, it took a further 13 years of lobbying, letters and phone calls to persuade those in power. In 2008, the first ever no-take zone in Scottish waters was established around Lamlash Bay.
We were ecstatic. It was absolutely great. We held a small celebration. You know, we've campaigned for 13 years to get this no-take zone, but in reality, this is the start. It's like a living laboratory. What happens when you leave the sea to just naturally change, do what it wants to do?
Now, it's been 10 years since the no-take zone was granted, so I suppose the big question is, has it worked? Dr. Bryce Stewart from the University of York has been carrying out research and surveys in this protected area for the past 10 years, documenting its recovery. Are you seeing a lot more marine life in the no-take zones now compared to the areas immediately around them?
We're seeing much higher biodiversity overall in the no-take zone. It's about 50% higher. And also for some particular species like lobsters, there's more than double the number in the no-take zone, and scallops as well. And both the scallops and lobsters are much bigger as well, which is really important.
So this must have a knock-on effect for the fishermen.
Yeah, that's what we think is going on, particularly for those key species, lobsters and scallops. Because they're much bigger, the females are producing lots of eggs, and those eggs are hatching, the larvae are spreading out in the currents and reseeding the fishing grounds. So by protecting just these small areas, you can actually have a big benefit.
And for Howard, the benefit includes seeing more on his dives once again.
It's absolutely fantastic to go down for a dive, and what we're going to see this year, what's going to have changed this year. It's only 2.67 square kilometres, but it has numerous different types of habitats. So it's great seeing things sprout up. This spring we've seen a real good range of different types of nudibranchs, which divers get very excited about because of all the colour. Last Monday, I had a great experience with a Pluriblanctus, which is also commonly known as the Highland dancer. and some fantastic octopus in amongst the bright pink live merle. It's such a joy to see.
Do you know what? Every now and again, as a conservationist, you come across something that really lifts your spirit, and going up to Lamlash Bay and witnessing the recovery up there was one of those events. Fabulous work. And that's thanks to Howard, thanks to the members of Coast, and thanks to the local community as well. And you know what? They didn't stop there, because in 2016 they pushed through the designation of an MPA, a marine protected area, all along the South Arran coast. Now here's a map. This is the Isle of Arran here. This is Lamlash Bay, and in red there you see the no-take zone. And this in purple, right around the south of the island, is the marine protected area. Now what does that mean? Well, unfortunately a marine protected area is nowhere near as good for wildlife as a no-take zone. They do allow some destructive types of fishing within their boundaries. These are all marine protected areas around the UK coast, but if you look closely you'll see these 3 yellow dots. Those are the only 3 no-take zones in the whole of Britain. Lamlash Bay here, Flamborough Head on the east coast, and Lundy Island in the Bristol Channel. And they're all very small. The biggest one, Lundy, is 3.3 square kilometres. So yes, it's better than it was 30 years ago, no, without a shadow of a doubt, but it's not good enough. What we need is we need more no-take zones, and we need bigger ones too, if we really are to make a difference to the marine environment.
Trouble is, Yolo, it's out of sight, out of mind, isn't it? If that sort of situation was here on the terrestrial environment, there'd be an enormous outcry. It just wouldn't exist, basically. But because we're not out there, we just don't see it, and we haven't been looking after it properly.
And Lamlash Bay is only because Howard is a diver.
Yeah, and a brilliant job, like you say.
Fantastic,
heartening
fantastic,
stuff.
yeah, good man.
OK, well, let's go to a super-duper nest now. The best super-duper nest that we could possibly offer you. I'm talking about the best bird in Britain, the goshawk. Look at this. Oh, come on. Oh, my trousers are rubbing thin. Look at that. What a bird. What a bird. An avian terminator, Yolo, that's what I call them.
It certainly is. Mind you, when you said best bird in Britain, I thought we were going straight to the chaffinch, but the goshawk is not a bad second. It is a cool
Here
bird.
we are with this one large chick in the nest there, which is a superb bird, and you can see it's surrounded by all of that green vegetation that they bring in. We thought that was protecting the chicks from, you know, parasites and bacteria and things. I read recently it couldn't be the adults when they're incubating. But what's been happening in this nest, because when we first put the cameras on it, there were 2 chicks, and you can see they're looking pretty healthy. Lots of food's coming in, bit of grey squirrel there on the edge of the nest, but so are the chicks on the edge of the nest. Look at this. And they're having a little bicker. And look at the size of their feet and legs. They're way too big for them at this stage. It makes them inordinately clumsy. And you can see them staggering around there. Look, both of them again, not in the cup, the security of the cup, on the edge of the nest, and that's how high up the tree the nest is. And when the adult takes off on this occasion, she almost knocks that youngster out of the nest. And that, I'm afraid, is what happened to the second youngster. There's one left in the nest there, stretching its enormous foot, you can see. Very sadly, we found the other youngster at the base of the tree, full crop, perfectly healthy, but having fallen from the tree. And Yolo, you've seen this before.
I have. I used to monitor a lot of goshawk nests in the 80s and the 90s, and we found so many healthy-looking chicks, often with full crops, at the bottom of the tree dead. And it's because they spend so much time right on the edge of that nest. And as we saw there, they are incredibly clumsy birds until they grow into their feet.
Yeah.
What a shame, what a shame.
But we can continue watching that. Well, we're definitely going to continue watching that next week and to catch up on those fabulous goshawks.
We're back on Monday, and so I think we ought to check some of the birds that we've got here on site. So let's go straight to the live chaffinch. Come on, boys, it's a trouser up. There it is, and look how exciting that nest is. Can we see anything in it? I think we can see a couple of little chicks poking out? Maybe not even. OK, let's move on straight away to the blue tits, because I think this could be the last we see of the blue tits. I reckon they'll go over the weekend. Lucy, I want your prediction. When do you think they'll go?
I reckon those tits will be out by Saturday night.
Saturday night?
Yeah,
OK, then I'll say Sunday morning. What do you reckon, Charles?
Saturday lunchtime.
Yeah, Saturday morning I think they'll go.
But needless to say, we all think they'll be gone by Monday. What about our gold crests? Let's have a look at them now. Can we see anything? Oh, actually, these have been in, out, Lucy. They're boomerang teenagers, basically.
I don't know what they want to do they?
They'll never go. And look, there's a tweet there that's come in. Goldcrest parents need to get an eviction notice for these chicks. They're milking it. That was from Anne-Marie White.
Students they are, I think. Students, they're just not going to go.
They'll be gone by Monday.
We did have an opportunity earlier today, because for the first time we'd seen both parents approaching the nest, and we saw this, because we were having trouble sexing them. Here's an adult, and look at that, with the crest up. That flash of orange dictates that this is the male bird feeding these youngsters. Excellent stuff, excellent.
Well, as I say, we've come to the end of our second week. We'll be back on Monday, but I think we can safely say it's been a fabulous 2 weeks so far.
Springwatch, the most fun you can have with your binoculars on. Next week, Gillian is heading south, down back to the southwest to her homeland to check out the wildlife that there is down there.
And unfortunately, this is it for me. This is the end of the week. So I'd like to thank the crew, thank Michaela, Chris for being so welcoming. Thanks to you at home for your kind comments. Theresa May was on the phone begging me to stay, but I just thought, I can't. Yellow wagtail, long-eared owl, goshawk, and the pinnacle of my career so far, the chaffinch. I can't go any higher, so I have to step away. But I'm handing the baton on to you, Lucy.
Thank you very much, Yolo. I shall try and follow through. And tonight I'm heading out on an otter stakeout, so tune in Monday to see how that goes.
And of course, you can stay with us over the course of the weekend by looking at our live cameras. They're on our website and on the internet as well, of course. And it's not just you that have been watching our cameras. Our birds have been watching other birds. The long-eared owl. Look, quite likes the blue tits. Definitely interested in the chaffinch. Bats, occasionally on the menu. Yellow wagtails, very nice. Goldcrest. But look at this. Finishes on the blackbird. Yeah, they've got a taste for blackbirds, long-eared owls. There's no doubt about that whatsoever. So do stay looking at those cameras over the weekend. We'll be back on Monday at 8 o'clock. Maddie Moat at 1:30 for schools. Until then, goodbye.